If you've ever wondered what it would be like to take a class at Harvard, you're about to find out from one of the university's most distinguished and popular professors. But don't worry, he doesn't teach advanced calculus or nuclear physics or ancient Greek literature. In fact, if you were the kind of student who spent all your time staring out the classroom window, then Professor John Stilgoe's classes may be just for you, because looking around is exactly what he teaches.
Come on, let's go down the alley. Alleys are good things. They're good for cats. They're good for looking around.
His title at Harvard is Professor in the History of Landscape, but his classes don't have much to do with bushes and flowers. He's much more interested in the urban ecosystem that has been shaped and repaved over the centuries, like the vast underground world beneath our feet.
That's a nice grating. I haven't a clue what's down there. There's a ladder. A lot of wires.
When Stilgoe took me along on the same walk he takes his students through in Cambridge, it turned into a march through the American industrial past.
Boston Elevated Railway.
Here's a relic from a long-extinct trolley company. And there's a memorial of sorts to the American steel industry.
It probably has a casting date on it someplace. 1968, cast in Alabama. And if you move along looking at cast iron on streets, you'll eventually come upon the newest stuff that was cast in India. This is genuinely a wilderness.
He teaches the art of exploration, discovering the built environment, which can include everything from architecture and history to advertising and design. He introduces his students to a method of discovering a hidden world that's always been right there in front of their eyes.
I start by showing slides of things that they think they have seen, and it turns out they haven't seen. The white arrow that's on the side of every FedEx truck is a nice place to start. Before they've learned to read, toddlers will see the arrow, and I've asked toddlers, do you see the arrow on the truck? They usually do.
So where's the arrow?
The arrow is between the lower half of the capital E and the X.
Right there.
Right there.
I've never seen it.
Well, you have now. And the nice thing about it is, you see, you've seen it, and usually when I point it out, people say, oh, I've never seen that before, but of course it's right there.
Professor John Stilgoe says the arrow is just one of millions of things that are right in front of our eyes that we never notice.
Now, all of this stuff is a world that nobody sees or nobody thinks about.
I think people see it, but most people, when they learn to read, stop looking around. I try very hard in this university, which selects students based almost entirely on how well they do with words and numbers, to teach them that there's another way of knowing.
This other way of knowing is simply using your eyes. The power of acute observation is one of nature's most useful tools for learning. But Stilgoe says the constant blur of modern life has caused us to lose it over the years.
I think we have, and I think there are good reasons we've lost it. I mean, I don't tell people to start looking in 360 degrees while they're driving a car. But if you were jogging along in a horse and buggy 100 years ago, you could look around. And I have people now who really have never been told to slow down, look around, take a nice walk. Instead, they go jogging or running to increase their heart rate. And I tell them, why not look around while you're doing it, increase some kind of rate in your mind.
Harvard, he says, is some of the finest students in the world, but he believes most of them are visually illiterate. Their academic lives have been programmed around verbal and mathematical tests that will get them into a good college. He says they lack a sense of spontaneity.
I think they've missed a kind of self-guided, non-organized activity, non-sports activity growing up. They're wandering around, getting into things, and the assumption seems to be nowadays is if a child isn't in an organized activity, the child is a criminal, right? But, I mean, as far as I can understand, most of my colleagues I work with seem to have found their careers by being slightly disorganized, lucking into something, you know?
Which is exactly what happened with John Stilgoe. He grew up in a small town south of Boston, the son of a boat builder. He was the first member of his family to ever graduate from college. He came to Harvard 30 years ago to get a PhD and has been there ever since.
See the gill nets.
He's written a number of scholarly books on subjects ranging from the development of the seashore to the impact of the railroads on the American landscape.
Oh, that'd be fun.
But it's his eccentricity and accessibility that have made him so popular with Harvard students. Sarah Rotman, Lisa Feynman, Agnes Chu, and Chris Hunter are recent graduates.
I kind of thought he was just crazy. Like the first week of class I was there.
I went on a little walking tour with him this morning, and you know, we stopped and looked at manhole covers, we stopped and looked at
empty parking lots.
Empty parking lots.
This is the site of the Cambridge gallows.
Trolley poles.
There it goes. Slight little hum.
I came away like thinking, well, what am I supposed to do with all? It's very interesting, and I feel like I'm learning a lot of stuff. Does it all ever like tie in?
Well, I don't know that there's necessarily something in particular that you're supposed to do with it, and I think that might be my favorite part. Rather than making you a better lawyer or a better doctor or teaching you how to be a good accountant, it's a way of living.
Stilgoe, who teaches in the School of Design, devotes a lot of time to the visual media and to advertising messages, which he believes have subconsciously shaped his students' perceptions.
Now, what is this selling?
This is selling pantyhose. I can't imagine how it sells pantyhose, and I've given a good deal of thought to the fact that the most atrociously sexist images of women that I can find are in magazines that are aimed only at women. I mean, the woman is out in a sun-baked, I guess, arroyo with a very nice sink full of water in front of her, and in the far back is rumbling a freight train. She has a locomotive engineer's hat on. How does an ad like this sell sinks? Does it sell sinks to women? What does the nation's railroad industry think of being depicted like this, right? I haven't a clue. But if you put up an ad like this for an hour in a final exam with one direction, discuss, you'll force students to do something.
I don't think I'll ever be able to look at a fashion magazine again without thinking of him.
When we were talking to your students the other day, one of the things they mentioned was the fact that you're pretty vague sometimes in laying out what you expect from them. Calculated?
This generation of Harvard students gets into Harvard by doing exactly and precisely what teacher wants. If teacher is vague about what he wants, they work a lot harder to figure out what they want and whether or not it's good. The vaguer the directions, the more likely the opportunity for serendipity to happen. Drives them nuts.
Every year, he sends his students into supermarkets to study product packaging and product placement. The marketing people leave nothing to chance and start going after new customers before some of them can either walk or talk.
The design of a package is incredibly important. And I tell them to duck walk down the cereal aisle of a supermarket, and they'll realize that the eyeballs of the figures on the cereal boxes are looking down to the place where a toddler meets the eye if the toddler's in that little seat in a grocery carriage.
Stilgoe pays great attention to the psychological powers of color in manipulating moods and images. Take the color of his own kitchen.
Apple green was thought by a number of turn-of-the-century psychologists to be a calming color, and many of them told husbands to have their kitchens painted in that color so that their wives would be happy in the kitchen and not want to register to vote, and so on. And nowadays, if you go into the basements of old police stations and mental hospitals, you'll see the apple green color.
At his farmhouse outside Boston, Stilgoe receives junk mail under a number of phony demographic profiles he's created for himself. He wants to see how direct mail advertisers tailor their message if they think he's an African American or an Asian. He got the idea from two of his students.
I had two students who were living in sin and who were seniors and discovered that the American Express Company had sent each of them a catalog. The interior of the catalog was identical, but the covers were different. The man got this cover, Every Man's Dream, a space cadet woman hanging on him and gazing off into La La Land. Her thoughts are his. The woman got this cover, Every Woman's Dream, a horse. And the males are on the other side of the fence. Now we have a roof over our head.
It's all part of Stilgoe's scheme to instill in his students the power of discovery and deduction.
Take a look over there.
To notice unseen things that tell them what's really going on. Like what's behind the traffic congestion at so many self-service gas stations.
One way you eliminate traffic, especially intersection gridlock, is you have all of the cars sold in the United States have their fillers on the same side. Then everybody would pull into the pumps in the same way, and you wouldn't have all of this frenzied backing and filling and turning around, all right? Once you notice something like that, you'll start to understand why self-service gas stations are just nightmares. And no matter what we teach our students in the Graduate School of Design about how to lay out something like that, in the end they're stuck with a problem of industrial design.
That is pretty much the short course with Professor John Stilgoe, and you didn't even have to register.
It's a big window, and it came on a wagon, and it was put up with a miniature crane.
All you have to do is go outside, move deliberately, and relax. Do not jog, forget about weight reduction and blood pressure, and look around.
How long does it take you normally to get from one place to another?
It takes me a very long time, and I've started out in perfect confidence to drive to California, and I've wound up in Tennessee because things were interesting along the way. And if you just kind of wander along like that, following your nose, I mean, you find all kinds of neat things. Here's a grand tree that's been fenced off. It'd be a great place to build a tree fort. See that? Works fine. I suspect those doors are for the trash receptacles.
If nothing else, he says, it's cheap entertainment. All you need is the willingness to partake.
But look at all these doorbells. See? I mean, they're all pretty old doorbells. They're all brass, you know. One new one. Okay. And only 3 of them have any identification. So, and we could look in there. In a very, very unprepossessing lobby. So, oh, good, good, great. Hey! How we find us? Hi.
How you doing?
Did you just respond to the doorbell?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
60 minutes, right?
Right.
I'm Tom Kilby. How you doing?
Hi, nice to see you.
Is there somebody I can help you find it?
Oh, we're here to talk to you.
To me? About what?
Right. Okay, take it easy.
See you guys. Nice meeting you.
You do enjoy it, don't you? God, you enjoy it as much as I do. I no more pushed one of those buttons.